Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
Please don't let me be misunderstood. Isn't that something that we all want, is to be understood? That no matter how much we're stumbling around in whatever imperfections that we have or limitations, we know what our true heart is, and that's what we want people to see in us, is who we really are. Michael Beckwith, back in 2016, there was a group of us. Sorry, the light's in my eyes. There are people here who was part of our group that went to Santa Rosa. Sherry, you went, right, to Santa Rosa? Oh, you didn't go on that trip? Oh, is there some? Yeah, to Michael Beckwith, Anna and Gloria and Jerry and Kathy. It was an incredible trip. He has his center down in Los Angeles, and he's very I would say mystical, big energy. And he got on the stage in Santa. I'm sorry, I should put my hand down. He got on the stage in Santa Rosa, and nobody prayed him in. There was no music. There's nothing. He just got on this. They just introduced him. Here's Reverend Michael. And he came out, and for 2 hours he spoke, and we were flying high by the time we left into that spiritual state. But he said something that has stuck with me ever since, because he has this gift of words and language. And he said, there's only one planet, but there are many worlds on this planet. And ever since I've been thinking about that. We're all one planet, but we live in different worlds. We all have our different ways of looking at things, and we think that everyone is in our world, and then we get frustrated when we realize, oh my gosh, they're not. We bump up against who they are, and they're like, oh wait, their world really isn't what my world is, and my world isn't really what theirs is. And it can happen. Sometimes it's clear, but sometimes it surprises us. We're like, wow, we really live in different worlds. How do we communicate? How do we find harmony? Well, one of the things that Pierre, in the spirit of the Olympics, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the philosopher and anthropologist, said, is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Are you all familiar with that phrase? We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So let's just take a moment. I invite you online and in person to just close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to feel your spiritual beingness. Just see if you can, in this moment, connect with that which you would call spiritual about who you are. And now I want you to see and connect with that which what you would consider human about who you are. Okay, now you can open your eyes. There may be everyone's going to have a different experience, but there might be some of you who have very clear distinctions, but sometimes it's hard to tell, isn't it? What's spiritual, what's human? What part of me is spiritual and what part of me is human? We know that the human part of us doesn't last. It's relative. It has a history, at least the human flesh. And then the spiritual part of us is eternal. Those are concepts, but do we actually make a distinguishment in our lives? And do we know how to make that distinguish? Are we able to make that distinguishment? And does it matter? The people who are really experiencing the highs of their spiritual expansion are some of these Olympic athletes. While we were in Philadelphia, Julian got Jack and I watching the Olympics, and it's been so much fun. It's so much fun. And the first one that really hooked me was a 10,000 meter race, which is like over 24 times around the track. It's long. It goes on. And apparently America hasn't had any medalists in this for decades. And then, so we're watching it, and we didn't realize it was so long, so we're just sort of doing other things. And it's getting near the end. And then, I forgot his name, Grant Fisher, I think. He's in 6th place. Doesn't look like America's going to win a medal again. And he's just going along. 6th place, it's near the end. And suddenly he just starts pulling up. And we're all like, yeah, go. It was so fun. And he gets a bronze medal, the first medal that America's had in years, decades, in this race. And you feel the joy. He'd been pushing. And there's something so extraordinary about that moment where you've been striving to give everything that you have and you achieve. Maybe not the gold, but he got a medal, which was big for the Americans in that race. Another one that I really loved was a woman named Tara Davis Woodall. Is anyone familiar with her? No. So she is a long jumper, and she got 6th place in the Tokyo Olympics. Her husband's name is Hunter Woodall, and he is a Paralympics athlete because both of his legs have been amputated. So so they met, they're married. And so you see her getting ready. She's 6th place in Tokyo. She's really been working hard. But I didn't even know about her. They have a video of him in the stands. And first he's up in the normal seats. And he's like, come on, baby, you got this, you're an Olympic winner, come on, baby. And then everyone starts clapping their hands, and he starts crying already, you got this. And then you could tell she's just getting up there, and he suddenly says, you got this, and he goes tearing down the stairs to the very front of the stands, and he's like, you're an Olympic gold medalist, you're an Olympic gold medalist, and he's screaming, and she hasn't even jumped yet, and she just starts running, and she jumps, and she wins the gold. And then she goes running into his arms, and they're hugging. He's like, you did it, you're an Olympic. And I'm just like, I could watch that over and over. I've watched it so many times because it's the joy and the teamwork. So there's been individual accomplishments, there's been team accomplishments, there's been people who have strived and have achieved, and people who didn't achieve, but they're already planning for the next Olympics. They're like, we're going to do this. We're not giving up. We can feel spirit in that, in a very tangible way. If it's not heady, you feel it in your body. I don't even know these people. I didn't even know who they existed before last week. And suddenly I'm all moved by their stories. All the stories are great. I always thought about sports because when I was at Agape, this was back in the 90s, there would be about 4,000 people on a Sunday. And seems like a lot for a church, but just wait a few hours to the sporting events. And if you have only 4,000 people in the audience, you'd be like, what's wrong? Where is everybody? And I've always been intrigued by that. Like where people really want to be are the sporting events or in the movie theater or anything that makes us expand and feel something that we don't normally feel. And it also gives us hope. I think the thing, I've asked my brothers, because they all are big into sports, said you never know what's going to happen, but it's never over. You always have hope to the next time. You can always push yourself. And you get to see people do remarkable things, and you have no idea that they're going to do them before they do them. It's like a surprise. We feel the power of spirit. And then everybody wants to, your team doesn't win. And so that's why people get so involved in who the players are and who the owners are and the trading and the rules and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I hear it because of Julian. But he's part of a huge world. We're in the minority coming here to a church on a Sunday. He's with the majority. People get so wrapped up, and they want to, because what he wants to do is figure out how to make it work so they're going to win next time. And even if you win the championship, I'm from Cleveland, we've only won one championship in my lifetime. This was LeBron James and the NBA championship. But then you have to start all over again the next season. You're back to ground zero. I'm like, wow, that's intense. But they love it because they're always pushing. They're always getting better. They're always wanting, so that you're always breaking records. People are doing things today that 100 years ago they never thought were possible. This is why we love it, because we see it. When we turn within, sometimes it's hard to connect with spirit, and even if we do connect with it, it's hard to have a shared experience. Athletics, movies, when you're all crying together or laughing together, you're feeling that shared experience of something that connects all of us, that's almost intangible, and yet you can see it. You can feel it. You watch a movie about a story, and everybody's caught up in the exact same story at the exact same time. One of my issues with streaming services, we're all doing different things. There's not as much of the collective energy happening. So I think sports is getting more and more of it, actually, because we want some place to connect. What does it mean to be spiritual in our world today? And what are the challenges of what that means? So I was in Philadelphia. We went to Jack's family in York, which was lovely. It's been years. We were trying to figure out how long it's been since we've been there to be with his family. His family was Catholic. raised Catholic. I'm not sure they're continuing to practice it, but they were raised in it. And so there's a connection. We understand there's certain things that we feel and get with each other. And then we went to my family's and my mom's in Nuremberg, and we had this big Saturday dinner, huge table, and there was about 12 or 13 of us. Not all the spouses were there, not all the kids were there, but it was a big portion. All my brothers were there. Big portion of people. And I sat with this, and the dinner table conversation was so familiar. But it's so different. I'm like, oh, I really did live in a different world when I was growing up. I didn't quite realize it, so I'm sitting at this big table. And it was great. They're interesting. They're funny. Jack chimed right on in there. He's like, psh, humor, wittiness, but clever and interesting discussions about things, about how we got on our jobs. I couldn't share how I got on my job because it's spiritual, and I don't know how to talk about spirit with my family. But there are 3 gifts that I've been given from my family that I wanted to share, and it didn't happen this past week. We don't get into these conversations anymore because we have a clear boundary of what we don't talk about. But and it's not politics. We do talk about that. But I want to share those 3 things because it teaches me. They have been teachers for me, and I want to share those teachings with you because they've been really powerful to me on how I've progressed on my spiritual journey. So my dad once asked me, I said to him once, when I was at Agape, so I was getting a little bit more courageous about talking about spiritual things, and I said, well, I'm doing this because Spirit guided me to do it. And he said, well, that's interesting because people who bomb abortion clinics also say Spirit guided them to do it. I'm like, yeah, but it's different. Our understanding of who this God is very different than the person who bombs an abortion clinic. He goes, yeah, because your values are different. That's not God, that's you. That's the values you were raised with, and they're responding to the values they were raised with. What does that have to do with God? He just so irritates me. I should say, he is a Harvard-trained lawyer. So I knew intuitively the difference, but I couldn't explain it, so that put me on a whole journey. So I'll get to that. I'll respond to all 3 of these. First, I'm going to give you the challenges and then the growth that they have given me. Second one, my brother George, who also happens to be a Harvard-trained lawyer, but he was in junior high at the time, and he said, and I remember it so well because I felt like I was being accused. He wasn't even talking to me. He was talking to someone else, but I felt like, oh, that's me. He said, people who believe in God, it's because they're not strong enough and they need a crutch. If you know who you are, if you have strength in who you're in your own ability, you don't need a God. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I need a God. I need a God. Do I only need a God because I need a crutch? They tormented me. They didn't even know they were tormenting me. They were good people. They are good people, and they're interesting people, and I'm so grateful for them because they do push me. Do people who are achieving goals, is that God, or is that them just using the God-given? We say God-given. They don't think it's God-given. They just think it's part of being human to be able to create your imagination. You can visualize. People are using all the techniques that we teach. People are using in sports, in business, in art. You visualize it. You imagine it. You see it done. You see it complete. You go to sports psychologists. These people are doing all of that stuff. Is it spiritual? Good question. What does it mean to be spiritual? Third and last one, my mom. I was talking about I read in N. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled, and he mentioned it. He was talking about grace, and he said, isn't it amazing? We think of how bad some of these, somehow I associate it with car accidents, but I don't know if that's what he was writing about or not. And he said that we notice the car accidents, but think of all the millions of car accidents that are missed every day. That there's this grace that is watching over people all the time. Just we can all think of those moments we just miss being in a car accident. So I was telling this to my mom because I thought it was such a beautiful example of grace. And then my mom said, well, what about all those people who did get in car accidents? The most annoying family. What about the people who it doesn't work for? What about them? So I'll just leave you with the questions and we'll answer them next week. Okay. To be continued. So I'm going to go through these one at a time. So the first one, what is the difference between someone who says they're guided by spirit and they do something what we would consider violent and not appropriate, and what I would do, what we would do? If God was guiding us, I don't think any one of us is going to feel God is guiding us to hurt anybody. Well, I have a friend who I met 30 years ago, and we felt the spirituality in each other very strongly, but it was the most confusing connection because he was very Catholic, and I was very not Catholic. I was at Agape. I wasn't quite. I was getting all the Agape tapes. I was in Virginia at the time, and so we're talking at each other, and I can't figure it out. How can we both feel this presence so strongly? I feel it in him, he feels it in me, but we are so completely different, and I'm so clearly right. Why can't he see how narrow and ethnocentric and exclusive and rigid Catholicism is, and how open and inclusive and amazing and world-centric New Thought and New Thought spiritual progressives are? And I thought I was quite articulate in explaining why we were superior. Didn't have much of an impact. He took me to a Catholic service. I left enraged because I hadn't been to one, and I didn't know I wasn't allowed to take communion, and I was told to sit down. And I'm like, what? I can't even be part of your club? Ugh, this is so not Jesus. I gave him tapes from Agape, and he's like, no, he's missing the boat. So it's been a journey. So we haven't, needless to say, we were in very different worlds. His whole life we went in completely different directions. We would connect every now and again, because I think basically why we continued to connect is we were trying to see if the other one actually had seen the light yet. And we never had. I wasn't moving and he wasn't moving. And so we've been communicating a little bit more lately, and again, as we started communicating, the same thing. We feel the connection, but then he writes things and it feels so confining, and so I have to argue with him. I try not to, but I have to. But then something shifted in me. Something shifted in both of us, because we were realizing we weren't getting anywhere, but we were feeling the spiritual, so we started moving a little bit more into spiritual conversation that was less theological. He wasn't fighting me as much on my world centrism. He's like, yeah, I can actually, when I say something from Shunryu Suzuki, oh yeah, you know what? Because it's not my teacher, but I can actually feel the truth in that. And then as he's talking about his path, I'm like, wow, you're deep. I mean, he was really going deep in the mystical aspect of Catholicism. I'm like, I didn't even know you could go there from that religion, from that understanding. And so suddenly, we're getting wireless mics next week. So I'm here, he's here, and we've been doing this for most of the time I've known him. And we don't talk that much, but whenever we do talk, we like each other, but we go like this. What's happening is we're going up. We're going up into spirit. We're leaving our theologies and our viewpoints and our ethnocentric, world-centric worldviews, and we're just moving up to spirit, because spirit is beyond all of that. And we're beginning to connect at that level, and it's in a way that's not as linear, as clear, but it's happening, and I can't explain it. And what's happening as we're connecting, as we're going up to spirit, I'm thinking it's like a bridge between us, but you have to go up. As that's happening, this is turning to be like this. He's still Catholic. I'm still New Thought, spiritual progressive. That's still there, but we're not doing this anymore. We're doing this. But we didn't get to this by banging against each other. That is not how we got to this. We got to this by going to spirit. Going to something that we can't explain. I don't mean just he and I, all of us. It's something that is very hard to translate into words. It is beyond all the worlds. We live one planet, different worlds, but there is that which transcends all the worlds. And when we start moving deeper and deeper, we have to let go, by the way, to go deeper and deeper. I had to let go of my point, and he had to let go of his point to go deeper, and that's the place where we connect. And this is the place where healing starts to happen. At the human level, we live in different worlds, and we are going to find people that we are bumping up against, colliding with all the time. And we can argue and articulate our brilliant points of view, and it makes zero difference. The only place that we are going to start healing, not changing the other person. I'm not trying to make him less Catholic. He's given up on trying to make me less what I am, whatever I am, and non-defined. But in spirit, we're beginning to understand one another. That's beyond concept. Spirit is beyond concept. Spirit is beyond concept. That's where the healing takes place. This is what it means to be spiritual and human. It's both, all the time. So even as I say that's how I would answer my father. I could use integral theory and the Wilbur-Combs lattice rationally, but that's still just thoughts, concepts. The only way I can't, and I couldn't explain it to him because he wouldn't go to that higher place, so I can't connect with him there. But I'm saying in there, that's where movement can happen. And that's when we start to understand each other a little bit more and be able to have conversations that I could not have before. I was completely incapable of giving any validity to anything he was saying because it frustrated me so much. And vice versa. The only way that healing is going to happen for all of us in this world is through spirit. Second one, you can just do it on your own. You don't need God. That's true. People who are giving themselves, whether it's athletics or art or science, there is this confidence, because I get to experience it in my family, of the I am within them. They do not attribute it to spirit, but what we know, there's only one, right? There's only one I am that is alive in us, and they're connecting with it, and they feel the power in them. My oldest brother, who's probably the most passionately atheist, I mean, not that he preaches about it, but I see no movement. He's going to be atheist till the day he transitions. And he's a great athlete. And if I say, well, but you know what it's like to be in the zone, he goes, oh yeah, I know what the zone is. And we see him go into the zone. We're all mesmerized because when he's playing a sport, it's like he just shifts, and it's like his eyes in the back of his head. He knows everything that's happening on the court. It's not a linear process. It's not rational. You know, we think of atheism as very rational. He's moving into an expanded state of consciousness. He's just not going to use those words. The disagreement is with the words, not with the experience. The I am of me can know and want to realize my fullest potential. Every one of those athletes are realizing their fullest potential, and they're accessing the depth of the I am within them, and it's being cultivated and nurtured through imagining and visioning and sports psychology, and all that stuff is our tools to nurture the I amness of our being and to fulfill the self-expression. I'm using sports a lot because we've been watching a lot of Olympics. But it's science, it's art, poetry. In fact, just a side note, because I see at least two, probably more, poets in our community. I was reading about, there used to, in the early Olympics, like in 1924, I think they said. I should go look. I should have looked it up. I heard an article about it, heard a video on it, that they used to have poetry in the Olympics. They used to have artistic, and they talked about how they judged it, and it's kind of interesting. So it's really moved into sports, but there was different things. Anyway, the point is we have this urge to fulfill who we are. And that urge is the I am of us. So when I said turn within and feel your spiritual self, it's hard to distinguish between our spiritual and our human self because really it's all one. And it's hard to say, well, I'm spirit over here, but I'm human over here. The human self is made up of spirit in our languaging. My brother would call it the zone. He would probably attribute it to different brain synapses or something. But the experience, again, the experience beyond the concept is where we meet, where he and I could connect and go, oh, we're talking about the same thing. Just different ways of going at it. We're in different worlds. He thinks I'm in this weird spiritual world, and he's in the realistic, scientific world. But in fact, our experiences meet. And this is always how we're going to heal separation. It's always in the direct experience of spirit. Not just our concepts come from that, but the concepts that we use are often based on my world. So I'm going to use concepts that resonate with me. He's using concepts that resonate with him. So it seems like we're in different worlds, but when we start realizing that, those are just human concepts. Is this making sense? I'm sort of repeating myself because I just want to get that the spiritual essence is beyond concept. It's the concepts that can limit us. Again, there is a coming together when we start realizing we're talking about the same thing. The I am of me and God, the thing that my brother was saying is correct, is actually the same thing. Okay? Third one, most important, I think. No, not most. They're all important. What about the people who don't do it? What about the people who do all the visualizations, who go to sports psychology, get their group of people knowing the truth for them, cheering them on, you can do it, and they might not even not win a medal. They might not even make it to the Olympics. And then they're striving and they try to get into the next Olympics and they still don't get into the Olympics. And they strive again and they still don't get into the Olympics. What about those people? What about the people who I gave up a long time ago, are not even trying? Sometimes we call them they're sleepwalking. They've just been so shut down because of life. Their walls have gotten so thick from their inner world, and you can't even. And they might be hurting people all over the place because they can't feel anything because they have this huge thick wall. What about spirituality for them? Or what about people who don't have thick walls? I think of, but didn't make it. It just popped in my brain. It was so funny. This person popped in my mind, and then he showed up on my phone. It was his birthday. His name is Scott Valentine. He played Nick on Family Ties in the 80s. He was Mallory's boyfriend. And he spent a lot of time going, duh. I don't know, he sort of grunted a lot. And I'm aware of him because my roommate was friends with him. This was in the early 90s, so Family Ties had come to an end. He had bought a big old house, had all this success, but then he wasn't getting hired for anything, so he had to sell everything. And now, it was funny because I was just thinking about him, and then it popped up. It was just his birthday. And they said, what happened to Scott Valentine 30 years later? And he's an investor, and he's in a whole other world. He went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, did really well there, 3 years, got a job right away. That was what he wanted to do. He got frustrated that the role that he made the most money in required the least. He said there would be some times in this one sitcom I might grunt twice and I got paid a ton of money for it, but didn't require a lot of acting skills. So he wasn't getting a lot of jobs from it, and so that peered away. And I've always thought about that because in the acting world, I should have looked it up, but the statistics of how many people want to be professional actors and want to make a living at it and how many actually do, it's huge. The gap is huge. And I lived in LA. I was surrounded by people in New Thought communities who want to be famous actors or working actors or professional actors, and they almost all had other jobs. They knew the tricks of visualization. They were in Science of Mind. They practiced everything we practiced, but it wasn't showing up for them. This is a really important point because I was surrounded by it, and I couldn't just ignore it. What about the people with health challenges? The only answer that we have in New Thought is you didn't believe it hard enough. That is the answer that we had. It's because they didn't really believe it. Well, you talk to some of those athletes and tell them they didn't really believe it. Oh, you didn't get that because you didn't really believe it, or it wasn't meant to be. In all of this, there is a mystery. There's so much we do not understand. That's going back to my friend who all these connections that we make spiritually that makes no sense. Like, how can I connect with him spiritually, but humanly I can't? It's a mystery why when we go up to that world we can connect, and all those things start to dissolve. Spirit, and the only spirit that I am willing to focus and put my attention on, is the spirit that is in everybody. That is in everybody. That is in the saint and the sinner. That is in the gold medalist and the person who never tried. It is in the person who's living in terror and is traumatized and can't move, and it's in the person who is fully expressed. It is in the person who tries everything and still fails, and they try again and they still fail. Spirit is in every human being fully. As we heard in the reading today, every one of us is the center of God's love and attention, where their circumference is nowhere. We are all the center of the divine eye. We are all absolutely unconditionally loved. No matter who and what you are, no matter what you have or have not done, you are loved completely, fully, profoundly on every cell of your being. I'm just thinking, it just popped in my mind, the Dead Man Walking. Does anyone see Dead Man Walking? Did you see Dead Man Walking? So a lot of you have seen it. It was a movie, I think, in the 90s. It's been a while. Sean Penn, I believe it was pretty gruesome. Whatever he did, it was gruesome. It was a violent act. I believe he raped and murdered someone, and so he's up on death row. Susan Sarandon's playing a nun, and I think it's based on a true story. What I remember is she's trying to break through to him, to get him to own his experience, and to get him to know that there is a loving and forgiving God. And at this point, I'm in the 90s. I like my Hollywood movies. I want him to get it really quickly, and there to be, oh, hallelujah. And he's not getting it, which is why I have a hard time watching the movie, because it's not until the very, very end, as he's going off to die, there's a shift. And you can see that the light goes on inside of him. That's so important. We go high and hold that spiritual truth for people who seem absolutely untouched. They have these huge walls. They may be hurting people because they're so out of tune with their insult. We need to do the spiritual work. We can still have a protection because they might be bumping up against us, so we might need to have a little protection. But behind our little wall of protection, we're opening our hearts in light for that person. Because we are impacting people when we don't even know it. The problem with getting so focused on manifestation, I understand it, because when manifestation, we can see it, we can feel it, we can share it with one another. It's awesome, and I love it, and I'm here for it. But when we get too focused on the manifestation, we become what people call spiritual materialists. And we think if we're not seeing it, it's not happening. But it's always happening, even when we don't see it, even when we don't understand it. We hold that connection that we have with God for everyone, no matter what. Because we know that when people start to get that little light, where they just finally might be feel a little bit safe enough to maybe own some things that they've hurt another person for. There's forgiveness, there's healing, there's love. All that we talk that God is available to everyone all of the time, forever and ever. This is what it means to live a spiritual life on earth as it is in heaven. It is up to all of us to always go high, to go up. Curtis Hawkins always talks about looking up. You have the third eye, looking up, transcending, because that's the place where we start doing the healing down here. The healing down here happens when we know that we're one. That all these different worlds that we're bumping up against and having our challenges with, and even our own interior worlds, some of us may have feelings of not liking parts of ourselves, and we're bumping up against things we don't like about ourselves, places in ourselves that we think are ugly, unlovable, unwanted. Inside of us, we don't heal it by keep telling yourself, no, you're good enough, no, seriously, you're good enough. That part of us that believes that you can't beat it down with words. We open it through love, through this transcendent love. And the only way we can heal it with that transcendent love is by connecting with that transcendent love. We are all spiritual beings having a human experience. Our job is to be more interested in spirit than anything else happening on this world. To be more interested in spirit every day of our life, all the time. To be passionate, to give ourselves, as the Olympic gold medalists give themselves to their intention of getting a gold medal. For me, that's a wonderful metaphor, an example for us on the spiritual journey, to be unrelenting, no matter how much we get all confused and disoriented. We have people like Tara's husband. You got this, you got this. We have people cheering us on. You are a spiritual being. Don't ever forget it. You are a spiritual being. Don't ever forget it. You are a divine spiritual being. And he could say that all he wants to her. I could say that all I want to you, and vice versa, but we have to do the work too. And so spirituality is work. To get up there, this is dense down here. This is dense energy. We have got to do spiritual work. Work as hard towards getting to know that as Olympic gold medalist has to work to get their gold. I remember there, and I'll end with this, when I was with Reverend Michael sent me a CD of his weekend at Naropa University. He was giving a meditation retreat. And so I'm listening to the whole retreat. And it's at the very end, and he never said this at Agape, but it felt so validating because they're getting quieter and quieter. It's a whole weekend of meditation. And at the very end, he's describing his journey along the way. And at the very end, he goes, and you know what? It's really hard. It's really hard. When I worked at Agape, it's like, oh, it must be walking around water. No, it was hard. To live a spiritual life in this very dense world, it's hard. But let's be inspired by the people who are willing to work towards what they want, and we see that, and we cheer it on, and our hearts are open, and we're so excited. Let us be that for one another and for ourselves. Let us do the hard work and cheer each other on and say, we got this. We're going to keep doing the work. We're going to do what it takes to keep expanding and opening to this transcendent self, because that's who we are as a spiritual beings in a spiritual community. Let's pray. So let us, if you are willing, to just close your eyes. Let's lessen our sensory input. And we're connecting inwardly. Spirit isn't just inside our body. Our body's inside spirit. Spirit is everywhere. And we recognize that everywhereness, this cosmology, the infinite cosmos, is right here in the center of our being. We can even feel it in our chakras, especially our heart chakra. We can feel the entire cosmos being birthed moment by moment. Everything is possible in this oceanic love, this infinite, unlimited, eternal love. Everything is right here. All the good in the universe, right here. All the love in the universe, right here. It is never denied anyone ever. Every single being on this planet Earth has access to this infinite, oceanic, unconditional, unlimited, unbounded love beyond our wildest imagination, beyond any human concept or thought or words. This love is who and what we are, and it is ours now. There is no more love in the past, and there is no more love in the future than there is right now in the center of our beingness. We cultivate and we nurture that love. We give ourselves to that love over and over and over again. And everything, every conversation, everything that's happening external is an opportunity to give ourselves again and again and again to the spiritual, oceanic love as we deal with health challenges, physical and mental health challenges, as we deal with financial challenges, as we if we're challenged with fulfilling our dreams. We celebrate that in the midst of all of that, no matter what, we are loved. We strive to know love in the midst of it. So even as we are striving for something externally, we feel the infinite oceanic love and joy in the midst of the process. Because there is no arrival place. There is no place where it's finally done. Because then we just start all over again. The arrival place is now. The arrival place is right now, here, in our hearts. There is no place else to go. There's nothing else that we need to achieve in order to get that love. It is already ours. We don't deserve it. We don't make it happen. It's already given freely and effortlessly because that's what Spirit is and that's who we are. Because that's what Spirit is and that's who we are. And we are unrelenting in our giving our heart and our soul and our mind and our body to this infinite oceanic love beyond our wildest human imagination, beyond all of our human concepts. We give ourselves to love itself. And in this, we are whole. In this, we are free. In this, we are joy. In this, we are fulfilled. Here, now, and forever. I give thanks for feeling, for knowing, for seeing, for claiming, for accepting this reality as all of us. Individually, as a community, as all the many worlds floating around on this planet, and way, way beyond. Thank you, God. Thank you, love. Thank you. In deep abiding gratitude, we let this word be now, knowing it is already done. In joy, in peace, and in love, we say together, and so it is. Amen and amen.
I walk in God in all